your astrology questions, or if you guys have natal chart questions or metaphysical questions, feel free to comment below. We'll give people a few minutes to join the room. Also, if you guys want your own natal chart reading or progressed natal chart reading, the information for all of that is going to be in the description box below. Welcome, welcome, welcome to all the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, questions about your natal charts, metaphysical questions, so feel free to comment below. What should we talk about today? Hello, Anna. How are you doing? Hey, Ray. How are you doing? How are you guys doing? I'm answering astrology questions. Hey, Misha. How are you guys doing? I'm answering astrology questions and metaphysical questions, questions about your natal charts. Ray says, what do I think about perfection years? I mean, just like anything in astrology, I see every piece of information that we receive to be there for a reason, but you can always take it with a grain of salt. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of predictive astrology, like don't hold on to those things. Don't hold on to them for dear life in terms of like planning your whole life around it. It's always good to know, but I always say take things with a grain of salt. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the people joining. You have 2 planets in your 12th house. What would you like to know about that? Welcome, welcome, welcome to the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal charts. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. You said you see your progressed midheaven is in Pisces conjunct Mercury, 27 degrees. You find it interesting. That's also your natal Pisces rising degree. You're wondering if you'll become a tarot reader. I mean, absolutely, if you want to, and if it's calling you, why not? Piscean things are all things to do with like the metaphysical realms, the psychic realms. It could even be film, it could be theater, it could be music, like anything in this world. So if it's calling you, it's probably calling you for a reason. And it's interesting because I do have the progressed midheaven videos coming out, so stay tuned for that. We're getting through the Pluto series first. Hey, yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the live. What should we talk about today? I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal charts. You said you got another live. You were just speaking about me with a friend. Oh, nice. In my opinion about the Saturnian energy controlling this planet, it is. Because you will see when you learn about New Age and these types of things and you try to kind of play outside of that, you will see that there's a restriction. And I'm not trying to like restrict people. Like I know people talk about limiting beliefs, but if you try to apply some of the New Age concepts, there's a missing link. Do you know what I mean? And then if you look at people's Saturn transits and the fact that you're in a Saturn transit like all the time, Saturn is controlling your life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to say. I don't want it to sound like a doomsday type of thing. I feel like, you know, as a collective, we want to elevate our frequency and break out of that. Like, I think that that's kind of like the end goal in one way, shape, or form. Like eventually we won't need astrology, but astrology is something that has been placed upon humanity in a way as a form of control is really what that is, because you can predict things with it, you know? So you said that's why you guys were talking about it. You're both on the awakening path. Awesome. Yes, there's definitely layers to awakening. I will tell you guys that much, okay? Because there's different layers and levels to it. What's awesome these days is like the frequency of the planet's higher. So it's like you're going through the levels faster. For some people, it might be intense, but if you're not resistant to it, then it's easier for you. How accurate is astrocartography? I mean, it's a thing. Again, just like anything in astrology, it's there for a reason. Something that you can do if you're interested in maybe more accuracy is look at the birth chart of that place. So look at the birth chart of that city or that country and look at the synastry between your natal chart and the natal chart of that place. It'll give you more insight. Like the lines are good to know, you know, but it's very general. So if you want even more information, more details, you can get it by looking at the synastry. Welcome to all the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal charts. So what would you guys like to know about astrology, metaphysics, natal charts, all the things? Camille, or is it Camille? You said you have a question. Your natal placements, Chiron, conjunct your true node and Libra in your 3rd house. You would love to learn about what that can mean and how you can best apply it to your life. So for you, your life purpose, like part of your life purpose is to be healing through that exact thing. So it's like, when you're acting in that area. So for you, it's Libra and it's in the 3rd house. So if you're a party planner, or you're like an event planner, or you're doing negotiations, or you're hosting things, or you're doing networking things, or maybe beauty, like maybe it's fashion, maybe it's law, all these things, when you're acting in that world, right, like you're engaging in that vibration, it's also healing for you, because that's Chiron. Chiron is the area that you're healing through. Now the 3rd house is the written or the spoken word. So maybe you write about it, maybe you speak about it. It's also about communities. So for you, part of your life purpose is probably creating some form of community in maybe your town, or maybe the city that you live in. It could be something like Libra-esque, you know, party hosting networking events, like kind of bringing people together. Yay, concerned. Yes, it's coming soon. Let's see, what else are you guys saying in here? You're welcome. You said, can I give you more insight about your sun? You said if your sun is a true Scorpio or a Libra born on October 23rd, can I compare a Leo moon to having a Leo IC? Okay, so being born on October 23rd, I'd have to look at the chart. I don't look at cusps. So you're either in the sign or you're not in the sign. So whatever it gives you, that's the sign. But now keep in mind, you go through secondary progressions. So there's that as well. So even if he's born at the end of Libra, he will progress into Scorpio. Like a lot of people in the public eye that are Libras, to me, give me very Scorpionic energy. And it makes sense because it's like they've gone through that progressed aspect of their chart. Like they're now in like the Sun Scorpio aspect of things. Now, Leo Moon versus Leo IC. Thank you so much for the super chats, you guys. If you're interested in your own natal chart readings or progressed natal chart readings, the information for that is in the description box below. Okay, so Leo Moon and Leo IC, you guys can look at it as like the moon sign is your inner world. Yes, it can be the mother, absolutely. It can be the home, but so can the IC because that's your 4th house. So you always want to look at the moon with the IC. Okay, this is for everything in your chart. You want to look at Mercury and you want to look at the 3rd house because it's going to tell you how that energy is operating. Okay, so just because you have a Leo in the IC, it doesn't mean you have a Leo moon now, but you do take on some of those traits and you take on some of those qualities. Same thing with Venus. I always look at Venus and the 7th house because it's going to give you an amalgamation of the types of people you're attracting. It gives you more insight. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, let's say you have a water moon, but then you have like your 4th house and an earth sign. Well, you're going to be a little bit more grounded. Do you know what I mean? Compared to like people who are water and water. So it's this. Welcome, welcome, welcome to all the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your guys' natal charts. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. You said astrocartography says that Boston would have been the best place by far. You know that it talks about the best places for what reason? Is it for finding a partner or getting in touch with your emotions? It depends. Like for astrocartography, the different lines mean different planets, okay? So it's like, if you're looking for love, you're gonna go on your Venus line. If you're looking for like spiritual awakening, you'll go on your Neptune line. If you're looking for like expansion, you'll go on your Jupiter line. If you want like ambition, you'll go on your Mars line. You probably want to stay away from the Saturn line or from the Pluto line. I've noticed a lot of the time people tend to either be born, like people I don't think willingly would move to their Saturn line or their Pluto line. Like they tend to kind of be there, like maybe they're born there and they're clearing a lot of karma if it's Saturn or Pluto. So yeah, but if you want change and transformation, absolutely go to those lines. But it's like the Saturn line, like everything kind of feels like an uphill battle when you're on that line. You know what I mean? So if you can avoid it, then definitely do. And you'll see a lot of the time people who feel like that pull to move or like that pull to leave wherever maybe they were living, it's probably because they were on one of these lines that were like intense. You said, what can you do when your birth time is in between Aries and Taurus rising? You don't know the exact time. Okay, this is what I do. Like I don't do this professionally, like the rectification of charts, but if I'm trying to figure out someone's time, like let's say it's a friend or whoever, right? Or someone that I know and like they don't know their time, but they've told me enough information. Usually I can figure it out based on their Saturn actually, or their Pluto actually. So it's like you kind of have to see what your Saturn is in. If you're older and like you've had your Saturn return, it'll give you a little bit more insight because then you'll know what's happening around the age of 27. So like let's say I meet someone and like this person maybe struggles with speech or like communication. I will know that maybe there's a Saturn in the 3rd house or a Pluto in the 3rd house, and then I'm playing with the numbers is really what that is, to see like add 5 minutes, subtract 5 minutes. So it's this. Now other ways, like you can try to figure it out is intuitively. If it's for your own chart, like you can look at the ascendant, descendant, which is your 7th house, and then your midheaven and your IC axis. Like that's going to tell you a lot about yourself. And that's really like gonna give it away. You know what I mean? So it's like if your ascendant is in Aries, that means your descendant is in Libra. So you're attracting Libra types of people. But if your ascendant is in Taurus and your descendant is in Scorpio, which gives you like that undertone of a Scorpio Venus energy. So it's like then you're attracting more Scorpionic types of people, you know? And it's like that's completely different. Now, you know, we can add interceptions into the mix, which is going to make things a little bit more complicating. But it's like if you at least have the time frame, you can kind of play around with like the minutes. Okay, you can add 5 minutes, subtract 5, add 30 minutes, like so on and so forth, to see like the houses. Mainly the houses are going to tell you, and it's going to be mainly Saturn. It's mainly going to be Saturn, and again, it's going to be based on your life events. You can also probably figure it out based on Saturn transits. This is what I was saying earlier about Saturn. Like you can figure out a lot about a person based on their Saturn transits, because it's like the energy is basically unconsciously playing out already. You're welcome. Hey everyone, welcome, welcome. I'm just going back up here. You said you heard someone say Neptune or Pluto do not count in the 12th house because they're generational planets. Well, here's the thing. Neptune and Pluto are generational planets, but the house still affects you. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the sign, and there's going to affect the generation as a whole, but you're still part of that generation, so you're taking on that energy, you know? And then it's like, then you also have aspects taking place as well. So important to keep that in mind. So it's like everything still means something in a chart. Yes, it's generational, but it's like, it's still in the 12th house, you know? So like having Pluto in the 12th, like that's a lot of unconscious and subconscious things that you're going to be clearing. Basically, Neptune in the 12th, you'll see a lot of like artists have this, a lot of inventors, like people who might even be interested in like substances and like creating art through like substances and these types of things. Like that's very much Neptune in the 12th. Although for Neptune in the 12th, it's probably best actually to stay away from substances, because that's kind of how entities can hook into your energetic field. I'm not trying to put fear out there, but that's just what happens. Let's see what else you guys saying in here. Welcome, Gemini. How are you? You're welcome. Saturn opposite midheaven. Oh, that's going to be a little bit more intense. I'm curious to know, is Saturn in your 4th house? Is Saturn in your 4th house? And can you tell me the signs that you have in there? So here's the thing, like if you're, okay, if your Saturn's opposing your midheaven, it's like in terms of your career, a few things, like maybe your career is going to kind of like flourish later on in life. Also, maybe you have certain things to clear within the home first before the career comes. Like it could be this as well. Let me know if you're still in the room, if you have it in the 4th house, and what signs you have in there. And if you do retype your question, just type it all again, because just in case I keep going. Okay, so you said how strong, let's see, how strong are parents compared to power line and astrocartography? What can Saturn in the 12th house and Sagittarius say? Okay, I'll get you in just a second. You said you have Aquarius in the 4th house. Yeah. Okay, Saturn in the 4th house isn't for the faint of heart. It gives you the undertone energy of having a Capricorn moon. And then basically that means that like when you were younger, usually like with Capricorn moon energy, like it can symbolize like maybe the mother did everything like traditionally or like by the book, but maybe she was emotionally unavailable, maybe she was working all the time. And then in turn, a lot of your self-worth is based on work, is really what that is. But it's interesting because I'm curious to know, is Aquarius in your 4th house overall? Because that's going to give you like that undertone of having the Aquarius moon, and that gives you a little bit more of like an unconventional vibe flair mixed in. But it's like, that's what's happening. So you basically have certain things to clear around the home with Saturn in the 4th house. I find sometimes these people like take on responsibility at a young age, so then they like basically avoid it later on in life. And like when you look at it as like, you know, as you turn into an adult and you grow up, like everything is about responsibility, right? So it's like there could be this unconscious part of you that is avoiding responsibility. Now it's interesting with Saturn in the 4th, a few things can take place with this as well in terms of your own home and your own family. So you might have kids earlier because it's like you might be trying to repair your home life through having children of your own, or you might have kids later as well, because it's like the home might be delayed, you know, with that Saturn in the 4th house. Like Saturn, like quote unquote delays, but it's like a divine delay, because it's like energetically you're clearing something first is really what it is with the Saturnian energy. So it could be maybe after the age of 35, maybe you have kids, or like create your own home, or like these types of things, okay, with Saturn in the 4th house. It could go into that direction, but it doesn't necessarily have to. It's like karma around the home. And then you said you're a Capricorn moon. Yeah, Capricorn moon is this. It's like they might come off cold, but for them, like a lot of their self-worth is like revolving around like them basically being productive. Like they have to be productive. It's like you might feel yourself literally getting into like a downer energy if you're not doing something like work related. Maybe it's work for yourself, maybe it's work around the house, maybe it's like a task. Like they always have to have a task, the Capricorn moon energy. So that's what it is. So it's like if you ever kind of feel off, it's probably because you don't have a goal, you know? And it's like this energy needs to have a goal. And it's like a lot of the time this energy starts out young. So it's like that Benjamin Button energy. So it's like when they're younger, they're going to be more mature. And then when they're older, they go more into their inner child because like they hustle when they're younger to kind of get that stability. Anytime you guys have Capricorn anywhere in your chart, you're basically like elevating the financial status of the family. So whether the money's there or not there, there's still something going on with money. Maybe there when you were growing up, especially if it's in the moon sign, maybe there wasn't money, maybe there was scarcity around money, maybe it was just the belief systems around money were like scarce and like shadowy. So just something to keep in mind, okay, with this energy. That's Capricorn moon, because it's like regardless of the financial status, you're elevating that financial status for the family line, and then in turn your own social status as well, and then the family social status as well. I'm just going back up. I'll get to everyone at the bottom in just a second. Okay, Saturn in the 12th house in Sagittarius. So Saturn's a generational planet, so that Sagittarius energy is going to basically be the 3-year bracket. So people within your generation, you're going to share it with them. So usually it's the father. If it's not the father, dominant masculine role in your life. If it's not this person, it'll be your teachers. Like anyone who is in an authoritative position above you restricts this area for you. So what is Sagittarius? Higher mind, higher learning, maybe travel. It could also be like maybe you were brought up in like a religious home and then your spirituality got restricted, or overall like your freedom could have gotten restricted. That's huge with Sagittarius energy. So you're kind of breaking free from that. You guys can look at Saturn as like the area that you're mastering in this lifetime as well. And usually Saturn, they say, matures after the age of 35. These days, the frequency of the planet's higher, so it could be sooner because people are becoming more self-aware, which is so good. So you could break through these things sooner, but you have it in the 12th house. That's a very karmic, like that's a karmic placement. It could be the sign of a writer with Saturn in the 12th house, but anytime you guys have 12th house energy in your chart, you can kind of look at it as like carried over energy from a past life, like something that you're closing out in this lifetime. Also, the 12th house are enemies as well. So whatever placement you have in here, these people could be like your hidden enemy. So Saturn in the 12 could be like authoritative figures, could be your hidden enemies. It could be like your teachers, like anyone who is in that authoritative position above you. It could be your hidden enemy. And usually like with like 12 house energy, it's like hidden enemies coming through as like positive people, if that makes sense. Because it's 12th house, like 12th house already attracts a lot of opportunists, if that makes sense. So yeah, Saturn in the 12th, it could be this. It could also be a lot of things that you're clearing in terms of like your subconscious in this lifetime. It could also be like a very psychic placement as well, very intuitive, but then also this could have been restricted for you. For example, like let's say you were super, super psychic or super intuitive, then maybe this got restricted for you when you were younger. Maybe like the thing is like children are so sensitive. So sometimes it's just like one comment a parent says without even thinking, you know, where it's like, imagine, you know, the child comes up to the parent and the kid is like, oh my gosh, you know, I saw this in the room. And then the parents kind of like, oh, like, no, you didn't, you know, it could be something like this, like maybe the parents cooking or whatever, but the kid could internalize that so much. So for Saturn in the 12th house, people like, you know, maybe the intuition kind of gets in a way shut off as well for this reason, like authoritative figures. Welcome to all the people joining. You said you have Saturn, Pluto, and Lilith in Aquarius, or sorry, in the 4th house. You said you avoid responsibilities as an adult. Yes. You know, it's so interesting. Just the other day, I heard someone use the term decision fatigue. And it's like, I was like, oh my gosh, or like even decision burnout. So it's kind of like this type of energy when you have 4th house Saturn, maybe even Pluto in there or Lilith, like, but specifically 4th house Saturn, it's like when you were younger, you had to take on so much responsibility. So it's like when you get older, in a way, like energetically, you're just like tired or like burnt out, or you kind of have this like fatigue from the responsibility that you had to take on as a kid. So like, it could be a lot of things. Like maybe you took care of your siblings, maybe you just had to mature really young. Maybe you started working with a family business. If they had a business, maybe you just started working early. Like it could be so many of these things, but it's like as a kid, you could have been doing like adult types of things. And then when you're older, you go more into the inner child is really what that is. But it's like usually this energy seeking some form of security. So you guys can look at Cancer and Capricorn energy, like they're oppositional, but they're both seeking security and stability Capricorn is seeking security and stability through finances, and then Cancer is seeking security and stability through family, okay? So it's like when Cancerian energy kind of has that family feel going on, maybe then they can kind of, you know, feel more comfortable to go out there into the world to seek finances, right? Whereas Capricorn is like they need the finances set first, and then after that they might be kind of like, okay, I have the financial stability or independence, now I might be interested in like a family, for example. That's kind of how the energies work. Saturn in the 5th house in Leo. So Saturn in Leo is going to be the subset of your generation. Okay, so it's in Leo. So it's the people within that 3-year bracket. So the area that got restricted for you guys is your creativity and your expression, and basically like being seen and on that stage. So it's like, for example, Saturn in Leo could have very much like wanted to be on a stage, wanted to be a dancer, wanted to be an actor, like these types of things. And then usually it starts out with the father, that's Saturn, but if it's not the father, dominant masculine role in your life, and so on and so forth, it'll be your teachers and your managers, okay? So let's say maybe you auditioned for like a play in school, and like the teacher didn't pick you, and like this really affected you, because like also the Leo energy deals with self-esteem. So that's kind of what's happening there. It's like a whole chicken and the egg with Leo energy, because it's like sometimes like they really, really want to be seen. They want to be out there, but it's like they also have that fear of, it's like they don't put themselves out there because like they kind of want the admiration right away. You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes you just have to do it. So having Saturn in the 5th house, similar energy, but also it's like the children aspect of things. So Saturn in the 5th house can also be children later on in life. So Saturn in the 5th house, it depends on the rest of your chart and the karma, because it's like you can either have a kid really young, or you can have a kid around your Saturn return with Saturn in the 5th, or more often than not, it's usually later on in life. After the age of 35, you might have a kid, or you might not have kids at all, because Saturn in the 5th is like figuring out that inner child and the creativity and the expression. So it's like either you kind of resolve that for yourself, and then later on in life, it's like you have resolved it within yourself, and then you're able to maybe have a child. Or sometimes like when people have children, they're like unconsciously resolving it through the child as well. So just something to keep in mind. You said Saturn in the 5th house, but you have a lot of children. Yep. So it depends. There's karma with children. That's the thing with Saturn in the 5th house. It's like either there's no kids or there's a lot of kids. And I've noticed that with Leo people as well. They also always have karma with children as well. Like there's always something going on with kids. So it's like a lot of the time, keep in mind, it's like it's either your own inner child or it's children. So it's like either you're working on your own inner child like through yourself, or like I mentioned, more often than not, what happens with people, especially when they're a little bit more unconscious, is through their kids, especially when it's like 5th house Leo energy. Lilith in the 12th house in Cancer. Okay, so for Lilith, you guys can look at Lilith as like Pluto's little cousin. That's kind of like Lilith vibe, okay? So it's like Pluto's little cousin, so it's like your shadows, your shadow traits, like the dark side of the self. So Lilith in Cancer can sometimes be passive aggressive. They can sometimes like not like say things directly. They can be kind of like, you know, emotionally manipulating people. It could be this, okay, with Lilith in Cancer. 12th house Lilith could be escapism. Escapism could be a big thing that's taking place, where it's like escapism is on a range. You can either shop all the time, you can just be an overthinker, you can be online all the time, you can eat, you can do substances, like whatever it is. It's on a range, right? It could be through people sometimes. So escapism is something that you might have to watch out for. I don't do predictive readings. Pluto retrograde and Sag in the 12th house. So Pluto and Sag is Gen Z generation. Like I have a whole video on this if you guys are interested. It is under my Pluto generations playlist. So I have 2 Pluto playlists. I have Pluto that is coming out right now, and then I have Pluto, the generational sign in there. So Pluto and Sag is going to be Gen Z. So with them, you know, it's really interesting. They're very high vibrational energetically. They're here to kind of just like raise the consciousness of the planet, lay in the new ideas, the new philosophies, the new like way of seeing things. They really fight for the underdog. I find they're very conscious of like the planet and like these types of things. So that's Pluto in Sag. Now, Pluto in the 12th house is a little bit more intense, okay? Because it's gonna give you that like undertone energy of like having Scorpio in the 12th house as well, where it's like there's a lot of things, like a lot of shadows that are taking place in the unconscious that have to be cleared. And sometimes Plutonian energy can like really like not want to see it or like hide it, because it deals with like power and control. So it's like wherever people have Pluto in their chart, like whatever house it's in, this is also the part of you that's kind of hidden. So you can either be unconscious when you're younger, but you can also hide it from people as well. So it's like Pluto in the 12th. It's like this individual can go through a lot of things, but people on the outside wouldn't necessarily know. Also with Pluto in your chart, it's like, it's the area where you might feel powerless in, and then throughout your life, you might be seeking power. Like I see it like a pendulum swing, okay? So you feel powerless in it. Someone takes your power away from you in this area. It could also be with like psychic gifts and abilities as well, where it's like maybe someone took your power away from you in that area, where it's like maybe they didn't believe you if you like said something intuitive or psychic. Like it could be this. And then also it can go into the under end of the pendulum, where it's like you're now trying to achieve power and control in this area as well. So Pluto in the 12th can actually go into like the shadow. I'm not saying this is you, but it can go into that extreme shadow of like even cult leaders, for example, okay, where it's using like 12th house things, but in like a Plutonian and control type of way. And keep in mind, like wherever someone is trying to like control something, like whatever area it's in, it's usually the exact area where they felt powerless in. That's that Plutonian energy. So eventually you're going to neutralize somewhere in the middle when you get into that Phoenix rising state. So when you get there, you're going to be super healing. You're going to probably have transmuted through a lot of these things. You might also be able to assist other people in transmuting these things, like these unconscious, like shadowy types of behavior. It's a lot to do with like psychology as well, just like unconscious things. And it's like people might be surprised, you know, that you went through this, right? Because it's like, again, the Pluto aspect is like, it's a part of you that you're hiding. Also where you have Scorpio in your chart, like you're hiding that part of yourself. First, you might be unconscious, but also you might be hiding that aspect of yourself. Like that's kind of how that Plutonian Scorpionic energy works. You said there's a lot of inner child healing and scarcity mentality due to family ancestral trauma. Very true. Restrictions around travel, nervous system issues. Okay, I'm glad that resonated. Hey, Bella. You said, can I speak on North Node in the 12th house in Gemini? Okay, so North Node in the 12th house in Gemini, that means your South Node would be in the 6th house and it would be in Sag. So in a past life, here's the thing with that Gemini and Sagittarius axis, okay? Sag is like a small fish in a big pond. Gemini is a big fish in a small pond. So it's like with North Node and Gemini, it could be like you becoming known in your town, okay? It could be like a mayor, for example, or it could be someone who has like a yoga studio, for example, like someone who is like known in their town, right? Like it's a big fish in a small pond and you're creating communities. So part of your life purpose is to create communities, but it's 12th house. So it's like the 12th house types of things might be through metaphysical things. It could be astrology. It could be anything to do with like the healing world. It could be film. It could be theater. It could be music. It could be writing. It could be like anything that's like romantic. It could be like those like videos. You know how people make those like videos? Gemini could also be social media as well. So, you know, when people make those like hope core videos or just like those like uplifting, like motivational types of videos, like it could be something like this, for example, right? Obviously it can be so many things, but that's kind of like the overall idea. So in a past life, like the 6th house was more so about the routine and it was in Sag. So it's like maybe you had like very great ideas. For example, maybe you were like ahead of your time in this way. Maybe you had like philosophies and like belief systems, but like the way that I see North Node, South Node these days is like you basically like completed it in the sense where it's like you mastered it, but you didn't actually complete it, because if you completed it, you wouldn't come back down here. That's the way that I see it. Like if you complete everything that you wanted to on a soul level, you don't come back down here on this earth plane. But it's like by coming down here, people get like sucked into other things and they get distracted, and it's like, actually, no, I want to do this now. I know I want to do that now. So that's part of like the whole reincarnation like loop thing, which is a whole conversation of its own. I have a video on that on my YouTube channel as well. It's called, I think, How to Clear Karma, where I talk about like the whole reincarnation wheel basically. But regardless, with the north node, south node, the way that I see it these days is like, you want to see how can you take the south node and apply it in a north node type of way. So maybe you have achieved some sort of like philosophy or like belief system in a past life with the Sag energy that you're coming through in this lifetime to kind of like deliver in a Gemini type of way, like in a more like, you know, like day-to-day type of way, like for the everyday type of person to understand. I hope that makes sense. Hey everyone, how are you guys doing? I'm just going in order, so I will get to you guys at the bottom. Scorpio ascendant and Pluto and Scorpio in the 12th house. You also have Pluto in the 12th house, so everything that I said for the other person is probably going to resonate with you if you were in the room. And then you said Pluto and Scorpio, that's the millennial generation. They have a lot of karma to clear, Like they're clearing a lot of generational things. They're clearing a lot of like things to do with like intimacy, vulnerability, sexuality, attachment issues. Anything to do with the mother moon is the millennials. Anything to do with like literally like everything that we see online that's kind of like quote unquote being purged, like that's all like the millennial stuff. And like the fears, I guess like the unconscious fears that like the generation is purging surrounding relationships, surrounding like intimacy and vulnerability. Also within this generation, like they're also here to like bring through like different ways of making money, like the way that we view money is going to be different also. So that's kind of like Pluto and Scorpio. Like a lot fell on this generation because it's like, you guys can look at it as like we have Gen Y, which is millennials, and then Gen Z, and that's the end, right? Like of the old paradigm, because then we have Gen Alpha. Like that's a completely different vibration. Like they're going to be doing something completely different compared to the previous generations, right? So by the time we get to like these final two generations, like Generation Y and Z, like they're clearing out a lot of things if you think about it, because it's like they're really like purging like the remnants of the old structure, if that makes sense. Like the old energetic structure is really, really what that is. So like things that like may have worked for like this generation's parents in terms of work and like, you know, like how to make money and all these things, like it's completely different now because now we have the internet and these types of things and technology and all of this. So that's Pluto and Scorpio. I also have a video on Pluto and Scorpio on my under my playlist. It's going to be the Pluto generations playlist, and I go in depth in there as well because I talk about how like this generation also like can channel like all of the things that have happened to them into art or like some form of like expression. So you'll see within this generation, like a lot of people have side hustles within Pluto and Scorpio, which is interesting to me because it's like, you know, it's interesting to see energetically like what's happening, because it's like you'll see within Pluto and Scorpio, like a lot of them like were working maybe corporate and then doing the side hustle on the side, and you really see like the consciousness, like almost like belief systems, if that makes sense. Like they've internalized a lot of like the parental belief systems of the 9 to 5 maybe structure, and then they have kind of like the hustle on the side because like it's all about like money belief systems, right? And then you have Pluto and Sag, which is like all about freedom. So a lot of the Pluto and Sag people are like fully in the entrepreneurial world, like especially using internet as well. So it's really interesting to see, like you see the gradual like shift into like the freedom frequency, if that makes sense. So yeah, a lot of things fell on Pluto and Scorpio to clear energetically. And then you have a Scorpio ascendant. So I call that video Expect the Unexpected, because Scorpio ascendant people like are always switching up on people is really what that is. Like you're gonna be like this today, and then it's like people start to see you that way and you're like, no, I'm gonna destruct this. Like it's your overall vibe, right? Like the vibe, it depends what's in your 12th house though, I'm curious to know. But yeah, like your overall vibe is scorpionic, like it's like out there, you know, and Scorpio doesn't really necessarily like to be out there. So when it's in the first house, it's interesting because it's like, it's not as hidden of a Scorpio energy. You know what I mean? Like Scorpio is more hidden and Scorpio is more private, but you have it in the first house. So it's like, it's all to the surface. Like you exude the scorpionic energy. You might have a lot of magnetism. You might have a lot of sexual energy, a lot of healing energy. You might be super intuitive. Okay, I'm just going back up. North node in the 4th house, that means your south node is in the 10th. That means last lifetime for you, or like the previous lifetime for you, would have been like a public life. So in this lifetime, you're a little bit more behind the scenes. You could be helping the collective from behind the scenes, if that makes sense, when you have that 4th house, 10th house access with North node, South node. I'm curious what sign you have in there, but also because it's in the 4th house, there could be a lot of things around the home that you might have to clear, okay? There could be a lot of karmas because it's probably conjuncting your IC as well. So whatever sign you have in here is going to give us a little bit more insight. Saturn, third house, Sagittarius, and you have stellium with Neptune and Uranus. So is it all in Sagittarius and in the third house? I find that third house people are here to master communication, but sometimes they could struggle in exactly that area. So it's interesting to see like the energies in a chart, because it's like you have the divine version of the energy and then you have the shadow version of the energy. When you have Saturn in the third, there could have been maybe like a suppression of your voice when you were younger. Like you were maybe fearing your authoritative figure, like maybe the father and then the teachers and then like, you know, managers and so on and so forth. Like there could be this fear of authority. So then you have a fear of speaking. It could be this. You could struggle with school. You could struggle with learning. You could struggle with communication overall. So I'm also curious to know what's in your third house overall. You said, have I ever been psychic? What kind of psychic abilities do I have? And any tips on getting information from the fields? Yes. So yes, I definitely am psychic / intuitive, like whatever term you want to use. I'm clairvoyant, clairsentient, and claircognizant. Like those are my top 3. So it's this, but I have a few videos if you guys are interested in developing your psychic gifts and abilities. I think it's in my metaphysical playlist. I have one like what divination tools you can use when you're starting to like exercise your psychic gifts and abilities, how you can learn to trust your intuition more, because different people have different types of psychic gifts and abilities. And like if you're trying to expand yours, you kind of want to see like, it's usually based on the 5 senses. So you kind of want to see like what's your strongest like area. So for example, well, you also have claircognizance. I guess that's not a sense, but like, let's say you're someone who thinks a lot and you like really think about life and like you ponder things. That's how you might get your psychic insight. You get it as a claircognizant message, okay? If you're someone who feels a lot, like you feel everything, you'll feel it within your body. Okay, that's going to be clairsentience. Let's say you're someone who has a strong sense of smell. You could have clairalience. Some people have like the clairaugustus, which is like the clear taste. Some people have, the clairvoyance. Like if you are like super visual as a person, like you see things visually, or you have like a strong like visualization, like that's going to be clairvoyance as well. Some people can see like in the physical reality as well. It just depends, like it depends on your own personal frequency. Now if you're trying to get in tune with your psychic gifts and abilities, this is where it gets interesting, because it's like all of the original religious texts before they all got kind of like broken telephone and interpreted in like a shadow masculine type of way. All of the origins of all these like texts and like information and just like any sort of like ancient text, like they were basically trying to help people reach enlightenment is really what that is, okay? So it's like literally if you eat clean, if you exercise, if you're a good person, like all these things, right? Like you're accumulating like the positive energy and the high vibrations, right? Like that's how you raise your frequency. It's literally this, like it's really simple. So then as you raise your frequency, right, you're able to go more into like the higher realms, and that's how you can pick up on the information, because all the information is, well, there's levels to it, right? We have the astral plane and then so on and so forth. So all the information is there. Some people have precognition. Those people are like the types of people who have like dreams that come true. I used to have that when I was a kid. I've noticed sometimes like when I personally have a deja vu, for me, it's always reminiscent of a dream that I had. Now, I don't know if this has been studied. That's just like how it feels like to me, but that's also a form of psychic gifts and ability as well. So it's there. Like, I think everyone is psychic. I just think it's a matter of like really purifying the vessel, like cleaning and clearing out your vessel, like clearing out shadow things that have been imposed on you, like all the lower vibrational things. Like that's all, like all the lower chakra wounds. Like I have my Explore the Chakras playlist, Exploring the Chakras. So in there, I touch on all the chakras, and I just kind of use the chakras as a reference point more so. So it's like when you look at people who are in their lower chakras, they're being pulled down energetically, right? You want to go up. So when you're getting into with your psychic gifts and abilities, you're going into higher vibrations. So it's like you want to go more into your heart space, more into like speaking your truth, because also through speaking, and I was just saying this to someone the other day, so like in the higher realms, like we don't actually speak. It's only in this realm that we speak like verbally. Everything in the higher realms is like telepathic. And same thing, like if you're a medium, that's another type of psychic gift and ability, you're telepathically communicating, right, with whoever you're communicating with. But it's all going to be through thought. So the thing is like in this realm we speak, but at the same time, the speaking is important because it's also a way to like clear your vessel. I hope that makes sense. Like you're actually like energetically purging when you're speaking. So it's important to speak. It's important to speak your truth, and it's important to speak like words that are nice and kind and all these types of things. So it's interesting to see how like in the origins of like all these texts, like it was all kind of there, but like I guess it just like got like broken telephone through time. Like here's the thing, like some things I feel like the consciousness of the collective like has to be at to actually understand. I hope that makes sense. Oh, you have precognition. That's awesome. You said, can you manifest by simply thinking about something over and over again? Okay, so this is where it gets tricky. So that's where it gets tricky. So, okay, I'm gonna get to everyone's earlier questions in just a second. That's where it gets tricky because you want to look at the vibration behind everything and you want to look at the intention behind everything. The only way that I can explain this is like when you have something already in your life, you're not thinking about that thing because it's already there. Okay, so the simplest example that probably everyone can relate to is like air. You know, you don't think about breathing like the air is there, especially if you're blessed in a country where the air is not polluted, right? So it's like this. Usually people are like trying to manifest something, and it's like, especially when they teach you like the law of attraction, they're going to be like, visualize it and think about it. But it's like, there's more to it. I think I have a video on this. I think I said in the title, it was like, the law of attraction doesn't work unless you do. Like you actually have to put in the action along with your visualization. Like you can't, it's not going to just come to you by like you just thinking about it all the time. Now, some people, if they don't have the resistance and they've cleared a lot and they have like the unconscious belief that something is possible, because a lot of things come back down to like your belief and how possible something is. Okay. So for example, I'll give you guys an example. Let's say in your mind, you're like, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy a box of crayons. Okay. It's like, you know, in your mind that that's going to be there. So it's like, you just think it and you go to the store and you buy it. That's kind of like everything kind of playing out together. You thought it, you put in the action, which is you go into the store, you found it and you bought it. You know what I mean? But it's like, if it's something that in your mind is like not like possible, like, you know what's interesting? Somebody actually had a video about this, and this wasn't even a metaphysical video. Somebody popped up on my feed and it was like a quote or something. And I don't know if the person said it in the video or someone said it in the comments, but basically what the person was saying was like, obsession is created when like you get rejected. So it's like this, okay? And it's like, same thing, if you're constantly thinking about something, you're kind of putting like an obsessive energy on that thing. And in a way, it's coming from a place of scarcity. I hope that makes sense. Like, you know, it's coming either from like a desperation vibe, like you want to see where is it coming from, this energy. I really, really hope that that makes sense. So it's like, if you're trying to manifest something, yeah, you want to think it, you want to visualize, you want to feel into it, but you just want it to be that, you know, and like move on, you know, let it go. But that's the hardest part for people, I think, is the letting go part. Welcome to all the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal charts. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm just going to go back up to answer a few astrology questions, and then I'll come back down. Karma with Saturn in the 9th house. You may have traveled a lot with your parents when you were a kid. So it could be this. You either traveled a lot, like maybe the parent, usually it's the father with Saturn, was like a diplomat or something like this, like some kind of traveling job where you traveled a lot and then you're kind of over it. Or it could be like a restriction on travel or a fear around travel with Saturn in the 9th house, okay? It could be this. Also, it could be a restriction on your higher education and your higher learning. So it could be like, maybe you don't go to university or undergrad or college like until later on in life because Saturn restricted this for you. Maybe it's after the age of 35. Maybe you're a more mature student. It could be this. It could also be restrictions on like your belief systems. It could be restrictions on like, maybe the family was religious, you were spiritual. Like it could be this. It depends. It really, really depends on the rest of the natal chart. You said your mom is a Leo, she asked for kids. Yes, that's when I was talking about the Leo karma with children. I've noticed they always have something going on with kids. There's always something going on with kids and Leo and like the Leo energy. Like either they have a lot of kids or maybe they don't have kids. Like there's always something going on because it's like, it's that inner child healing, basically what's taking place energetically. Mars in Cancer is a struggle because the energy is going to make you a little bit more lethargic. Now, obviously you want to look at the aspect. Sometimes you can have like a well aspected Mars in Cancer where it's like not as lethargic as it can be, but overall like it makes you a little bit more softer. I've noticed with Cancer energy anywhere in a natal chart, these people tend to have something always going on with the mother, whether it's directly or indirectly. Sometimes, like, the thing is with Cancer energy, like Cancerian people or wherever you have Cancer, it's like you eventually have to learn to cut the cord with the mother, whether it was a positive experience, whether it was a negative experience, because it's like this energy is always seeking that maternal type of person in their life, because it's like the Cancer person always is looking for that form of nurturing because they didn't get enough of it when they were younger, basically. Because like Cancerian energy is connected to abandonment, basically. A lot of the time Cancerian energy like either have orphan past lives, or like in this lifetime they're like really looking for that family feel, and a lot of the time that wound can really hold you back. It can hold you back. Like, let's say you want to move away to another city for a job or another opportunity, and maybe you don't go there because of the mother wound or like the connection with the mother. Maybe you don't want to leave her behind for whatever reason. I mean, sometimes you can't, I understand that part of things, but I'm talking like in a situation where you're able to, and it's like, it's just like that unhealed, maybe it's like emotionally incestual type of dynamic. It could be this. Also, it could be like then like throughout your relationships, like it could be in your friendships, like maybe then you don't want to leave your friends behind, or you don't want to leave like your job. Like it's like you're kind of always looking for that family feel and you're creating it, but at the same time it's almost coming from like a place of wounding, usually when you're like more unaware, is really what that is. So you just want to have the awareness, is really what it is. That's all you can have at the end of the day, and know that this could be something that's potentially holding you back. So Mars in Cancer is a little bit of a struggle because Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So when you have a placement like that, you want to see how does the oppositional energy work. So how does Mars in Capricorn work? They hustle, they work, they grind, like all these types of things. So you kind of want to adopt some of those traits, and it might be tiring. That's the thing. So it's like when you have a certain energy in your chart, if you're like kind of fighting against that energy, you might feel tired because you're going against the energy, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Like if you have a goal in mind, like we have to learn like the way that this plane operates is really what it is. And this plane, like the earth plane, is Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. Capricorn in terms of like time and putting in effort and like, you know, like really like persevering to get maybe your end goal or your ambition, like that's Capricorn. And then you have Taurus in terms of materialism and building. And then you have Virgo in terms of like the routine, and the practice makes perfect. So you have to learn to like merge like your energy, like how to play within the game is really what that is. It's a game. Placidus versus whole sign, you relate to your Placidus more, and your whole sign, you don't relate to it. So I go by the Placidus system because same thing, I relate to it more in terms of my natal chart, in terms of like the placements and all these types of things. So if you're going to do readings for people, or if you're going to look at your natal chart, you have to see like what resonates with your natal chart the most. I can't say there's a right way, I can't say there's a wrong way. You want to look at both and see, maybe one of them resonates with you more. But yeah, I would always say like look at what resonates with you most. I have an idea about what's going to happen with the presidential election, but I'm not going to say anything for now. Let's see. You said your Chiron is in Gemini in the 6th house. And what does that mean? It's opposing Uranus. You have Chiron in Gemini and it's in the 6th house. So that's the area that you're healing through. So for you, like let's say having a routine is going to be very healing. Maybe speaking is going to be very healing. Communicating, sharing your thoughts, sharing your ideas, having a lot of friends, doing like events with your friends, like hanging out with your friends, like that could be very healing for you. Is really what that is. Okay, when you have it in Gemini. Thank you guys for the likes. Thank you. You said your son was born in 2008. You are both Capricorn rising. Generational trauma healing has been a big journey for you guys. Absolutely. Like Capricorn energy isn't for the faint of heart because there's always stuff going on around money. And like, if it's not like directly money, like sometimes they can have wealth, but it's like, there's still like a scarcity. You know what I mean? Because it's like, sometimes it's more so the feeling behind it. Like you can have a certain amount, right? But it's like, if there's like a wound there, for example, you can still feel like it's not enough, and you could always be like chasing more and going after more and like hustling. And then the question sometimes is like, where is the limit here? Do you know what I mean? So Your rising is in Scorpio and your north node is in Scorpio, and your Jupiter and Pluto are in Scorpio in the 12th house. Nice. You said, hey, how are you doing? You said Neptune is making you really tired all the time and unmotivated. Any tips to overcome your fatigue? Your Neptune is in 12th house in Capricorn. Okay, so Neptune in Capricorn, that's the subset of your generation, and then you take on some of the energies within you as well because you're part of that generation. So I'm curious to know if you're part of the subset of the millennials who have this with like the Uranus and Capricorn, but regardless, like Neptune and Capricorn kind of blurs the area of career for you. It blurs the area of like hustling, making money, wanting to be an entrepreneur, maybe not knowing where to start. But in this situation, because that's generational, it could be the Neptune in the 12th house. And actually right away, what I thought of for you was like, Neptune in the 12th house is always picking up on energies. Like that's just what's happening with this energy. So my recommendation, obviously everyone has a free will to do what they want, but it's like, you need to focus on grounding more versus being out of body. Also sometimes like for 12th house people, you can be tired because it's like, a lot of your time is spent out of body. You know, if you're in the psychic realms and you're just like in those higher vibrations, like it's actually like moving faster. I hope that makes sense. So it's like, you might be just moving faster overall. And it's like, then when you finally get a chance to sit down, you're like, oh my gosh, like my body here in the physical is feeling super tired because you didn't notice because you're just like in the hyperactivity mode, right? Because it's just like, you're in those higher vibrations. So it could be this. Now, it could also be like you picking up on other people's things, which is probably more likely. So it's like if you're picking up on other people's things, there's a few things you can do. I mean, I made a video on this. It was called How to Ground as a 12th house person. And like, I feel one 12th house placement in a natal chart. So it depends, right? Like that's just how I feel it within people, even if they have that one placement. So Neptune in the 12th, like I've seen on these people, like even if they drink, even if it's just like one drink, it opens you up. That's the struggle with the energy. Like it just energetically opens you up. So you shoot out of body, you're open, and then you're picking up on other people's things more. And you'll see on these people, like even if they don't, like obviously the everyday person isn't going to notice this. Like I notice this just because like I pick up on vibes and energy, right? But it's like you'll see on these people, like their face changes in like a second. Like let's say like you're walking through an area and there's like a shady vibe, you'll see it on them because they pick up on the energy. So it's like you're gonna have to figure out how to ground into your body, how to close up your aura. So it could be a few things. Maybe you're drinking too much coffee, you're not sleeping enough, maybe you're too stressed, maybe you need to exercise to like release the energy. With 12 house people, like you also want to find like a healthy amount of busyness as well, because it's like, I feel like this is something that I've been thinking about in general for like people who are more psychically open and just like 12th house people. Like for them, what tends to happen also is like this earth plane is lower vibrational, right? Like it's the third dimension, right? So a lot of the time 12th house people are able to tap into the higher vibrations, and they themselves might be just a little bit more higher vibrational. It doesn't mean you're better or worse. It's just the nature of the energy that you have, right? So what tends to happen with these people, if they spend too much time just like not doing anything, you actually start to merge to the energy of this earth plane. And like, that's where all like the dark energies are like creeping behind the shadows. So you'll see these people, like they like to spend time maybe in nature or like places where it's like harmonizing their energy, or like sunny places, like these types of things, okay? Anything that elevates your vibration. Like maybe big cities could be intense. Maybe that's also why you're drained. Like maybe there's a lot of people around you. So it could be a lot of things. You're going to have to explore and see which one of the things it is, but it's probably one of these things. Okay. And most of the time, again, it's like, you want to have that balance of like not being like too isolated where you're picking up on all these vibes, but also not being too busy where you don't have the time with yourself. So like a healthy amount of busy, and exercise is always going to be helpful. Oh my gosh, good question. Any thoughts on celebrity, CLONES, and consciousness transfer? Yeah, that's a thing. That's actually a thing. So basically what happens is like, the only way I can explain it is like a lot of the people are like, when they're crossing out, they capture them on the astral plane and then they reincarnate them, okay, into this earth plane. And the whole reason they do this is because of basically like the quote unquote, allegedly, this is just my own opinion, my own observations, but it's like, here's the thing, okay? If you've done something quote unquote negative and you cross out, right? Like if you look at the karma, like the karma is like the loop here, right? This is what I talk about with Saturn as well. And just like the energetic, like there's like an energetic overlay around the earth, which I'm starting to think is Saturn energy, like Saturnian energy. But regardless, I have a live that I talked about that called Saturn Talks, okay? I have it under my lives, okay? It's gonna be in the playlist. But anyway, so with them, what happens is like a few things. One of the things is like, because of like the quote unquote dark things that they've done, like they can't really go anywhere else. So it's like, because they can't go anywhere else, they still have like this negative karma that they've accumulated, but then they try to basically manipulate the karma. So by trying to manipulate it, they catch it on the astral plane. Like, I really hope that this makes sense. They catch the soul on the astral plane and then they reincarnate them back. And you'll see this, okay? Pay attention and you'll see a lot of them, okay? So I'm trying to talk in code here, but a lot of them, like when they quote unquote cross out, they tend to have like a bathtub situation or a water situation. So what I've been thinking is like, it's almost like they use the water and like the bathtub, it's almost like this conduit, something to do with it to basically loop them back in, okay? There's something to do with water. Like, water is like interdimensional in this way, okay? So it's this. So basically they do something where it's like they capture the consciousness on the astral plane and then they reincarnate them back, okay? So it's this, it's really this, okay, that's taking place. So a lot of these people are in the same families, and like you'll see people, like I've seen people pop up on my TikTok where they show like how some people have like doppelgangers or like lookalikes from like way back in the day. And that's really, really interesting to see, because it's like, what are the odds that almost like all of them have that, right? But yeah, so it's this. So they basically do something, okay, energetically to loop them back in. I also feel like something that I've been thinking about too is like, okay, so when they join a lot of these groups or like hidden groups, they kind of get like the energy, like, what's the word? They get like the keys almost to like this plane. Like, they know and they have the awareness of how this plane works from like a spiritual perspective, okay? So that's what their whole like societies are all about, and like they get initiated into these levels, and you have levels of these groups as well, right? So it's like they know, and you'll see this. I was actually listening to a song. I was listening to a song by one of them. I'm not going to say their name, but in the song, he says, 4 kids, I'm going to have 4 kids, right? And then he says, and then I have to take all their beep to showbiz, okay? So some of you guys might know which song that is. So it's interesting because he wrote that song like how long ago? So he knew that he was going to have 4 kids, right? So I was thinking to myself, and I was like, I feel like they know, even in terms of like the astrological part of things, like they see, like they also all work with psychics and mediums as well. Like back in the day, kings and queens used to have psychics and mediums that work with them, but like people aren't talking about that. But anyways, so it's this. So I think they can see, and I also think that they know when they're going to cross out. Like I think that they know this as well. Like the people who join these groups and like they look into all of this information for them, like they somehow have more information, they have more keys, and they also understand how this plane works energetically. So that's kind of how they've been harnessing a lot of things. I hope that all of that makes sense. Yep. You guys are mentioning the people in the groups. Yes, absolutely. You said certain astrology has a history of health applications, but do you know of a modern way that people use astrology to heal physically? Ooh, that's interesting. No, I don't, but I'm sure that you could probably think of a way to do it. You said you like Placidus more. You feel like whole signs tells it how it is. Okay, I'm going way back up to see if there's anything else that you guys said way back. Jupiter in your 12th house, and then you have Scorpio in your 12th house as well. So unconsciously you behave like a Scorpio, and then Jupiter in the 12th, basically you are relearning your lessons around money. So many 12 housers in here, 12 house Sag stellium. So you guys are going to know everything that I'm talking about, the 12 house people. You're going to get it. 12 house Sag stellium, Sun, Jupiter, Mercury, Uranus, South Node, Neptune, Pluto, Saturn. Oh my gosh, midheaven is in Scorpio. Then you said Uranus, Moon. I don't know if you mean Uranus and Moon in the A house. Leo. Oh my gosh, that's an intense chart. That's very karmic, and like you're closing out a lot of things in this lifetime. I find that, and I can't confirm this, is just like psychically more so. Like I feel like people who have like a lot of 12 house energy in their chart, like more than one placement, like it's almost like you've been accumulating it through the lifetimes. It's almost like, you know, you come down here, okay, you don't get to complete that thing, you leave, you come back, and then you don't get to complete it again, you leave, you come back. Like that's kind of how I see 12 house energy, like old souls for sure. And there's always something that's not completed. Like Sun is your ego. Then you have Moon, it's going to be the relationship with the mother. Mercury can be a relationship with the siblings. It could also be your ideas. It could be the way that you think, all these things. Okay. So that could be Mercury. What else? Then you have your Jupiter, money. Okay. Venus can be your relationships. So all these things you're closing out in this lifetime. You said you've been studying the 7 Hermetic principles. In my opinion, is karma the same thing as polarity? I'm not sure what those principles are. I'd have to look into that. You said you dreamt of Michael Jackson's death 2 days before he actually died. You had the same thing with other incidents. Are spirits trying to contact you? Hard to say. In terms of intuition, you're only gonna know like, yeah, only you're gonna know like what's taking place. Let's see, Mars and Gemini in the 3rd house. I find Mars and Gemini, like in terms of like goals and like being like a, you know, go-getter, like they're a little bit more on like the, I don't want to, it's not passive, it's just they're indecisive. They can kind of like start this is boring, drop it, move on to that thing, drop it, move on to this thing, but they're very good at multitasking. So if you can get your projects to 80%, 90%, then you're gonna be good at multitasking all these projects. But probably in the earlier part of your life, like you'll even forget about the things, like you'll start this thing, you'll drop it, you'll do that thing, like all these types of things, okay? So that's the overall idea with Mars and Gemini. But like communication, you know, networking is probably gonna be like very beneficial for you, especially because it's in the 3rd house. Writing, speaking, like that's all gonna be motivational for you. Mars and Gemini retrograde. So retrograde, okay, when you guys have retrograde planets, it's similar to the 12th house in the sense that you're redoing it, but the energy is more so like you kind of have a resistance to it. That's kind of how it feels like to me, okay? Retrograde energy. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to do it again. Like how many more times do I have to do it? I don't want to do it anymore. Like that's kind of like retrograde. So when you have Mars in here, it's like your goal, it's your ambitions. It's like Mars is like going, right? And like retrograde is more so internalized. So it's like you're more so like experiencing things internally. Maybe you think about it more rather than act on it, especially because it's in Gemini. So you're gonna have to work harder to pull the energy out. You said, does astrocartography of Mars line really that bad? Your birth placements are good. You want to hear my perspective? I don't see, first of all, I don't see anything as bad or good, but Mars, like, I don't see that necessarily being negative. Like Mars is passion. It's like your goals, it's your ambitions. So maybe this is like what gets activated within you when you're in that particular place. You said, can I explain 2 opposite stelliums with an inner planet, 10th house Leo and 4th house in Capricorn? Oh my gosh, so you have like the 10th house opposing your 4th house. I'd have to look to see everything, what is in what house. But basically the whole pull here is between your public life and your private life. And keep in mind, the 10th house is the highest point of your chart. So you don't technically get to the 10th house if you don't like clear the previous houses, but specifically the 4th house. So if you have 4th house in Capricorn, like there could be things surrounding the home that could be holding you back, for example, from getting your goals, from getting your dreams. Like you might have to resolve something. A lot of the time for house Capricorn, it's their relationship with responsibility. So the 10th house is the public house, right? Like you want to be out there, especially because you have it in Leo. Like you want to be seen, you want to be on a stage, but maybe there's like an avoidance of the responsibility of doing that, for example, right? Or maybe like putting things out there. So keep this in mind, because 4th house in Capricorn, like they age backwards. So like they kind of get tired as they like get older because they've had to like take on so much responsibility at a young age for like the Capricorn 4th house or Capricorn moon. So it's this, okay? Amongst other things, but that's like the overall idea. Scorpio sun, moon, Mercury, and then Venus with a Cancer rising. So you have Scorpio sun, moon, Mercury. Oh my gosh, that's so much Scorpio energy. You probably attract a lot of stalkers into your life. You probably have a lot of healing energy. You're probably always like 10 steps ahead. Oh, I'm so glad that that resonated. Yeah, you said best real world answer ever. Taurus, Capricorn, and Virgo. And then you said you get it now. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. So someone in one of my lives said the best thing ever, okay? So we were talking, and basically like I was saying how like it's basically a game, right? Like the earth plane is a game and you have to learn the game. And then they said how like your natal chart is like your like chess piece kind of thing. Like it's like where you fit into that game. Like it's like kind of like the game board that you're like given to play, right? So to play the game, okay, you have to learn the earth plane is really what that is. So that's where a lot of 12th house people struggle, because it's like 12th house people, first of all, I feel like they've been down here so many times that they're over it. In terms of the earth plane, they see through a lot of things. They also, a lot of them want to fix it and change it, right? There's that part of it too. So they kind of get sucked into that, versus what I feel like 12th house people are actually trying to master or meant to master is actually the material plane, ironically enough, right? So it's like you want to take all the spiritual knowledge that you have and you want to figure out how can you master the material plane with that knowledge, because otherwise what's the point of having all that knowledge if you're not going to apply it, is really what it is. And it's just like, it's interesting to talk about, yeah, but it's like, it's also just like taking energetic space in your mind. You said moon opposing midheaven in a birth chart. So the home could be holding you back from like your career. Interestingly enough, I was saying that to the other person as well. So your moon is in Virgo, so maybe the home is really critical. And what I've noticed for this, okay, this is something that I noticed for Pisces, midheaven people, and then the IC in Virgo, okay? And then in your case, you also have moon in Virgo as well. I'm curious to know, your IC is probably in Virgo as well, so you kind of have that double Virgo energy going on. Pisces midheaven, I've noticed a lot of their like not knowing what they want to do and like the career being blurred. It's actually being fueled by the 4th house in Virgo, where it's like you may have had a critical upbringing or critical parents, or maybe they have set expectations for you. So there could be this part of you that's unconsciously trying to please them, or unconsciously trying to like abide by their rules, like you're not kind of, and like this then blurs your career area. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So it's like you might have to break through like that inner critic, because then like whatever, like it's usually the mother with the 4th house, but like the 4th house also can be the father, just like the upbringing overall could have been very critical with Virgo in there. So it's like now you yourself have this inner critic, right? You have this critical voice within. And a lot of the time, this is really interesting. I was just saying this to someone today. What I've noticed with Virgo energy, what's really interesting with them is like as organized as they can be, they can also be super disorganized, because they can be very like procrastinator vibes. Like they can really leave things until the last minute. And then in the last minute, they're trying to like get everything done. But the whole reason they're procrastinating is because like they're always trying to like make this like ideal perfect scenario. And it's like sometimes in them trying to make that ideal perfect scenario, the moment passes. You know, like let's say it's a deal on a vacation, for example, right? It's like them trying to like ideally like, you know, calculate and put everything into place. And for this, like by the time they make that decision to finally like do it, they've procrastinated so much, like maybe that vacation is now sold or whatever it was. Like let's say it was like a last minute deal. So that's what I've noticed with Virgo energy. So with that being said, Virgo procrastinates because of this whole perfection thing, okay? So same thing, okay, what I was saying to the other individual as well. And I have a video on this on my YouTube channel. It's under the miscellaneous playlist. It's called The Importance of the 4th House. I was basically saying like your 4th house is really important, because whatever's happening in there, you kind of have to like energetically clear or work through, or like whatever unconscious beliefs you may have internalized. I mean, even if we look at psychology, and I'm not a psychologist by the way, but even if we look at psychology, everything comes down to the original 2 caregivers. So a lot of like belief systems, whatever sign you have in there, you may have internalized from them, okay? And then because it's opposing your 10th house, you can't get to the 10th house if you haven't resolved this, especially because it's opposing, okay? So that's the overall idea. Yeah, I'm so glad that that resonates. You said there's a song by Tupac where he talks about the astral plane and reincarnation. Yes, you said you feel like all the key, yes, they know about this stuff. They do. And then they mock people because the people don't see it, and it's like in your face, like all of our faces, like it's all out there. Like if you listen to it, everything, like especially the olden day songs, okay? Like there's a lot of, I mean, I'm not gonna go too much into The Crown in this live, but there's a lot of like older songs where they like sing about certain things, and it's like they're literally telling you like what's taking place. Like in one of the songs, they're talking about like 1,000 years of peace and like all these types of things. So it's really, really interesting to see, because it's like, it's all there. Like all you have to do is pay attention. That's what it all comes down to. It's like, it's literally like in plain sight. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. You said allegedly many of them are stealing songs, ideas from others on the astral level. Yes, there's actually been someone, I really need to find that video. I found it, it popped up on my feed maybe in 2023. It was last year. It was early last year. So he was basically saying how one of them, again, I'm not going to name their names, but one of them stole his idea, and like this person is super, super wealthy now. And like he actually had a website about how this person stole his idea. Now I don't remember what his idea was, but it's this, or they have ghostwriters or whatever. Because you guys have to understand, like a lot of these people don't have their own creative ability. And like they bank on the actual creative people to create things. And you'll see this at like the micro level as well. It's not just like happening at like the great macro level scale as well. Like it happens in like basically like the day-to-day, especially in these industries, like they really, really do take a lot of other people's ideas. And it's like, whether it's directly or indirectly, like it could be happening indirectly in the sense where it's like, maybe you just got like a bad deal where it's like they somehow like finessed you or tricked you into like thinking that you were getting like a certain percentage of the money or whatever. And it's like, it ends up being just like you get 10%, they get 90%. Like you'll see all these things. Okay. Like this is all, it's true. Like it's happening, but it's like, you just have to listen. Again, like the people are openly telling you some of them too. I'm just way back at the top now. So let's see what you guys were saying earlier. Thanks for the likes, you guys. You have 2 stelliums, so you have it in the 5th house and the 8th house. So, and you have Scorpio in the 5th house. So the karma here is to actually be seen and be out there. Moon in Capricorn, Mars in Cancer. I talked about Moon in Capricorn way at the beginning of this live. So go way back and you'll see the information there. It was probably for another individual. You said, let's see. Oh, you said you moved away from a big city. Yeah, the big cities are definitely intense. Water is interplanetary. Exactly. It literally is. Like, even like, here's the thing, like there's so much more that we don't know. Like there's so much more going on with like the water energy, because it's like, think about it, even when you like go by water and you walk by water, it just like energetically cleanses you and it clears you. So there's just like so much going on with water. Water is life basically. And keep in mind, like, you know what's interesting? So when I wrote my second book, I think it's all on my shop, by the way, if you guys are interested, but like it's a book, but it's like more so like one-liners, so you can kind of look at it as like an overall like art piece. I see it more of an art piece, but regardless, like there's words in there. So in there, what I was writing, I was basically saying how we came from water, and it's really, really interesting because it's like, I was thinking of it more so in like the sense like out of the womb, but like it's just interesting that that psychically came through. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're on a plane. Like I see it as an energetic dimension. It's a dimension is what that is. That's how I see it. It's dimensional. Like the only reason we see physical, like anything, is because of the vibrational frequency that we're at. Like everything is frequency at the end of the day. Okay. So the reason we see material things and physical things is because of our vibrational frequency. Okay. Exactly, femme fatale. Oh my gosh, exactly. You said they know, but they don't want us to know, especially women. Exactly, because it's going to be the women who basically break through the energetic structure, or like the feminine energy, because it's like we see through the veil. Like it's like, again, that 12th house feminine energy. Again, it doesn't really matter what gender you were born into, because we all have these energies within us. But yeah, it's exactly this. You said, do you notice that energies in your chart draw the same energies? And hold on, you said, do you notice that the energies in your chart draw the same energies or opposite? Do you mean in my chart or somebody else's chart? Yeah, I'm glad that that resonated with you. Okay, I'm just going back up. What about 12th and 6th house intercepted with Pisces and Virgo, with Saturn and Aries in the 12th house? So is your 12th and 6th house in Pisces and Virgo? Okay, if you have the 12th and 6th house intercepted, basically it's like that healer's access. That's kind of what an interception is. And then what happens is like the energy sandwich, so it doesn't get acknowledged. Thank you guys so much for the likes It doesn't get acknowledged. It doesn't get appreciated. It doesn't get like, yeah, basically doesn't get acknowledged, appreciated. Like maybe the parents are different than you when you're younger. Like it could be all of this, okay? Where it's like the energy just doesn't have an outlet. So when you're younger or like more unaware, it's like the energy can come through at strange times. It could be this, like maybe you can go more into like the doormat type of energy, or maybe you can go into like being too healing and helpful to people, you know? Or you can really go into like the rose-colored lens glasses type of era as well, right? With all of that. So it's like you're trying to figure out how to balance the energy. That's kind of how it works with an interception. Like it's like the energy is there, it's suppressed, you don't know what to do with it. It comes through at strange times, but you also have the desire probably to express it. And a lot of the time, you're gonna have planets intercepted as well. And I've noticed as well, a lot of the time when people have planets intercepted, basically what ends up happening is like those planets tend to be a huge part of your life purpose, because that's just like this plane is like filled with irony, right? So it's like a lot of the time, whatever you're meant to be doing, you tend to struggle in that area, or just like you tend to go through like a lot of intensity in that particular area, or just like, yeah, you tend to get knocked down. It's just like, I don't know, it's just like the irony of this plane, I guess you can say. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You said Jimi Hendrix all along. The Watchtower is about Bob Dylan getting beeped by his beep. Uncreative people taking advantage. Yes, exactly. It's exactly this, because all of these people, if you look at their charts, a lot of them at least, they basically are very, very creatively like charged, okay? So especially like the artists back in the day, like they might have had 12th house in their chart, or they might have been like very Neptunian or like Piscean, or just like had these aspects that like gave them this like psychic gift and ability, right? And it's like when you have this, like you're prone to basically like attract energy vampires or like leeches or like opportunists. Like this is why a lot of the time like 12th house people sometimes like have narcissists kind of like lingering around their energy, because it's like those people, not all of them, like here's the thing, it depends on the person. Sometimes narcissistic people, like if they have, depends like what level they're at. Sometimes they're just like really traumatized and like they have entities operating through them because of this, and then like maybe if they were to work on themselves, like they could clear this. But some of them are just empty vessels. Like it could be this as well. Like it depends, right? So it's this. So sometimes the people who don't really have a lot of like personal power or like manifesting potential, they try to latch onto the 12th house person. But what happens with the 12th house person is like the 12th house person like tends to be like an empath, or like tends to like feel bad or whatever it is. And then like the other person hooks into that wound, and then that's how they siphon off of your energy. You said you would love the Aquatic Ape Theory written by a woman and available on Amazon. Love the way I speak. Oh my gosh, thank you. Let me screenshot that so I can look it up later. Yes, somebody else also mentioned there was another book as well that I screenshotted as well, because it's also about water, and I haven't read anything about it. It's just like more so intuitively, like just what I picked up on, like energetically, like, and also just like when you see visually, like all these things happening with water always, and this and that, like there's always something happening, you know? Thanks so much for the likes, you guys. I'm just going back up to see what you guys were saying up here. You said, is there a karmic spiritual reason why we feel drawn to certain places / people? Yes. So it depends. Like only you'll know this for yourself. But if you're going to a certain place, like sometimes you feel drawn to that place because maybe you're clearing something in that area for yourself. But sometimes like you're anchoring light in that area as well. Sometimes you're taking the light from the area and you're bringing it back to where you're like originally living. So it could be any of these situations. So it depends. Like you're gonna be the one who knows like which one of those things it is. But it's this, okay? Now, in terms of people and like being drawn to them, a lot of the time I find if there's this like intense pull, like you'll see this in synastry, it could be Neptunian or it could be Plutonian. And a lot of the time, like that could just be like really intense. So if you guys can look at your synastry beforehand and see and like cut that off right away, because a lot of the time, like that intense magnetic pull, like you're energetically, like it kind of feels like a vacuum sometimes also, especially if it's Plutonian. You said, what kind of people do Aries, Venus, and the first house people usually attract? Thank you, Chelsea, for the kind words. So Aries, Venus, and the first house. So if you have your Venus and Aries, you also want to look at your 7th house to see what sign you have in there as well, because it'll give you a little bit more information. But Aries Venus could attract people who are aggressive. Yes, sometimes it depends like as to what level of Aries it's in. Okay, so it could attract aggressive people. It could attract people who are sometimes a little narcissistic or like have narcissistic traits. It could be this if it's like in the shadow. Yes, you could attract people like that. You could attract people who are like angry or just like all about conflict. Yes, but the divine version of Aries is fun. Like they can be very much go-getters, leaders. When you have Venus in the first house, you'll definitely have an aesthetically pleasing face. Like it'll be like what's the word, like equal, like dimensionally, I guess you can say. So it'll be aesthetically pleasing, like it could be this. And then also Venus in the first house. Sometimes I find these people can be selfish in relationships, but I also feel like these people kind of like feel like, or at least know from a higher self level, that they have to complete certain things for themselves first before getting into a relationship. Like it could be the same thing with Aries Venus. Like when I did my video on Aries Venus, I called them the powerhouse. So symmetrical, thank you. That's the word that I was looking for. You said Britney Spears Hit Me One More Time, or Hit Me Baby One More Time, is filled with religious references, waiting for God to give her a sign. Yeah, exactly. You said any thoughts on Neptune-Pluto conjunction? Oh, that is definitely intense. I'm curious to know what sign you have in there and what house it's in. It'll give me a little bit more information. But yeah, so that could be like a lot of change and catharsis through seeing things through like a rose color like lens, like if that makes sense. So that's the thing. That's what I was saying about 12 house people. So 12 house people, also Neptunian people, and same thing with Pisces people. Like these people basically connect to people's higher selves. Okay. So you're connecting to like the divine version of the person, and eventually like through maybe some inner work, people could get there. But most of the time, like I can't say most people because a lot of people are starting to work on themselves these days, but like a lot of people don't change, right? So for Neptunian 12 house people, Piscean people, the best thing to do is see what's happening in the physical reality. Like, is this person aligning with whatever vision you have of them, right? So for you, Neptune, Pluto, it's a lot of like this like destruction probably through seeing things through like an idealist type of lens. But you go through this change. Like the thing is ultimately at the end of the day, like it's interesting because it's like Neptune is connected to the creator through like spirituality and just like being in the higher realms, but then Pluto connects to the creator by going through the underworld and by going through like the darkness and like the dark aspects of life. So it's interesting because like the end goal, if you look at both planets, like the end goal is the connection to the divine and the connection to the creator. It's just like the method is going to be a little bit different for both. Persepolis, to answer your question, I think a lot of them work with teams and like they specifically like implant certain things. It's this, let's see, what else are you guys saying here? Again, that's just my own opinion though. Let's see, I'm just going back up. What signs are responsible for social and generalized anxiety? You said you have so much difficulty talking to girls. Oh my gosh, so interesting. I was just thinking about this the other day and I was like, what is going to make someone like socially anxious? I wasn't thinking about it in terms of like astrology so much, but I was thinking like in general, like what could make someone like socially anxious or just like anxious in terms of like talking to like the opposite sex. So, I mean, you know, something that could be really connected to this could be rejection or just like being rejected at like a very young age, even in general with like social anxiety. Also placements could be maybe Saturn in the third house. Maybe it could be Pluto in the third house as well. In terms of like social anxiety, sometimes maybe Mercury in Mercury in Scorpio or like Scorpio in the third house as well could be this as well, because it's like sometimes the energy is hypervigilant. But the thing is, it's like if an energy is hypervigilant, you have to look and see why was the energy hypervigilant. So that means you grew up in some form of environment that like maybe has you in fear a lot of the time, or you were at a body a lot of the time, or it's like you were gauging people's like facial expressions and reactions and like, should I say it now? Or should I say it this way? Should I say it that way? Like to get a positive outcome, right? So it could start from this. Like I find a lot of the time also, once again, just my own opinion, and I'm not a psychologist or any of those things, but I find like social anxiety is connected to people who have psychic gifts and abilities, and it's like you're maybe tapping into the person's energy, or it's like maybe you're like already thinking about what they're gonna say and should you say this and should you say that. So it's like, honestly, it's all about developing the solar plexus chakra and the confidence in the self. That's the way that I see it. And then speaking your truth, because I find like in terms of energy, like the solar plexus chakra is connected to your throat chakra, and it's like a chicken and the egg. So it's like you develop your solar plexus chakra by speaking your truth, but sometimes you have to start speaking your truth to develop it. But at the same time, sometimes you might have to have the confidence to speak your truth. So it's this. So putting yourself in situations, I find that anytime like you have fear in any area of life, like this is for anybody really, this is what I used to do to like overcome things. Like I would purposefully put myself in those situations, and you do it so many times that it doesn't affect you anymore, right? Let's say some people fear maybe public speaking, or some people fear whatever it is. Sometimes it's the fear of the unknown, or like how are you going to be perceived, or are you going to have a negative reaction, or you're going to have a positive reaction, right? But it's like sometimes you just have to do it, right? And like overcome at least that first step, and it's like you start to slowly develop the confidence in the self. So it's like putting yourself in certain situations. So it's like if it's social anxiety, going to social things and putting yourself out there, and like maybe going to like, let's say like a networking event would be really good for that, because it's like then you're forced to talk to people. But going by yourself probably would be more helpful, because it's like if you're going with people, and especially if it's like a friend or someone that you're comfortable with, it's like, you know, like you might just lean on that person or be with that person the entire time. And the more you do it, and like the more you put yourself out there, it's going to basically help you build that. So same thing with like speaking to the opposite sex. Like the more that you do it, the more that you speak to them, it's like you kind of take off that pressure off the self. You said, oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so glad that the new perspective helps you. Yes, so when I do your natal chart readings, I'm able to hook into your energy. And I was just thinking this today, because I feel like even if I were to do it at different times, probably different information will come through. I mean, even if you go to different people, like different people are going to see different things. Like there's so much, like people who are learning astrology, like they're learning it for their entire lives. So like different people are going to have different information. They're going to give you a different perspective, and then you can kind of put those pieces together for yourself. You said, totally agree. You started doing stand-up at open mics to get over your social anxiety. Absolutely. You just have to do it, is really what that is. Because sometimes it's like, yes, fear of rejection, but sometimes it's just like, you know, the fear because you've never done it before, the unknown, just like you're doing something new for the first time. So it's like you do it, you overcome it, and you kind of go through this like whole like internal like catharsis and change. Good for you. That's awesome. You said, can I comment on what an intercepted Aries in the 11th house and intercepted Libra in the 5th house means, especially for the upcoming eclipses? Okay, so I haven't looked into the eclipses. So for the eclipses, you want to see what sign is it going to be in. I know there's one coming up on April 8th, so that's going to be in Aries. So you want to see what house you have Aries in. This is for everybody. You want to see what house you have Aries in, and it's going to affect that house, okay? So whatever house you have Aries in, here you said you have intercepted Aries in the 11th house. So that could be something coming to the surface regarding your friends, your friend group, your social circles. Maybe you're going to have like a new idea come up. Like an eclipse is like showing you something, is really what that is. Like it's like revealing something. Maybe it's giving you some kind of like answer. So you always want to see what sign is it in, what house do you have that sign in your chart, and then that's the house that's going to be affected. So that's for anything. Saturn going through something, when you have Mercury going through something, all of it, okay? So with the interception, you got Aries intercepted in the 11th house and Libra's intercepted in the 5th house. So you have that personality access, like the interpersonal versus personal relationships, right? Basically intercepted. So what does this mean? So you might struggle to put yourself out there. You could be indecisive, for example, with that axis being intercepted, like the Aries Libra. You could kind of go through like the extremes of like maybe being just with yourself and kind of like coming off energetically quote unquote selfish, or not having a strong sense of self because Libra's in there. So that's that access that's being intercepted with Aries and Libra. You could also struggle maybe with leadership, for example, or anger, or even like expressing your anger and expressing yourself. It could be this, okay? 11th house and 5th house is that creativity access, okay? So this being intercepted, basically you could struggle with like expressing yourself, putting yourself out on a stage, you know, being out there, maybe sharing your ideas, your unique ideas, all these things, okay? So all of that could be very much like something that, because the thing is with interceptions, like the way you guys can look at it is like the energy swallowed in your natal chart. Like you may have not learned how to express it, how to put it out there, right? Because the parents were maybe different. It's usually the original two caregivers, but it's like the parents were different than you, or maybe the parents had like completely different opinions than you, or just like it wasn't appreciated for whatever reason, right? So this is the whole idea with that. I don't think you have with a whole chart, I don't think you have intercepted signs. It's only in the Placidus system. Like the whole point of like the whole signs chart was like the person who invented it was like, okay, now every sign has its own house. So that's the whole thing. So you don't have interceptions, I believe, in the whole signs chart. I believe it's only in the Placidus system. You're welcome. You said you look at progress chart for the energies and signs and the house for the eclipse. You can. I always look at the original natal chart for all those things. The progress is just like an added energy on top. You could, absolutely you could. It'll give you a little bit more insight maybe. But personally, I always look at the main natal charts. Okay, guys, I'm going to sign off now. Thanks so much for being here, for your questions, for your likes, for your subscribes. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your evening.